I think we're onto something here. At least the space has always talked about AI and crypto being blended together, and now Coinbase is basically saying, hey, look, with our tool, you can spin one of these bad boys up in 3 minutes and have an AI agent basically trading, swapping, doing whatever you want it to do, plus a optional Twitter bot on top of it all. I think it's pretty fascinating, and it's something that we're probably going to see more of here as time rolls on. GM, everybody, welcome into another episode of Coinage. I'm your host, Zach Guzman, coming to you live from our Brooklyn studios here in New York City as we are watching the waning moments leading into perhaps one of the most important elections in American history. And of course, also, that would include Bitcoin and crypto's history as we are seeing Bitcoin make another run at $70,000 right now. And of course, we're going to be chatting everything coming up this week, as well as a recap of the biggest headlines that we have seen over the last few days and what could happen with this chart as we roll through the end of October and into the election. We chatted with Perianne Boring from the Digital Chamber for her thoughts on what the most important elections are to keep an eye on. You know, it's not just Trump and Kamala Harris, as we've been talking about. There's a lot more outside of just that one race to discuss as well when it comes to crypto. Beyond that, though, also an investigation into Tether. Bitcoin shrugging off the old Tether FUD. We'll dig into that in a little bit. Maybe it makes sense of why Howard Lutnick, Trump's co-chair, was talking so much about legal issues at the Bitcoin conference not too long ago. Now it makes a little bit more sense. And of course, we'll dig into the exciting stuff happening on the AI agent front. It's not just Goatius Maximus Goat, the more than $500 million AI agent related coin anymore. There's huge improvements being made on the Coinbase team to let anyone spin one of those bad boys up. So things are getting weird. But let's start with maybe the least weird of the topics to discuss, as we do every week, taking a look at the digital asset investment product flows from CoinShares. And what you see there is things cooling a little bit, as perhaps maybe people got ahead of themselves when we were talking about what this election might look like, where investors want to be allocated. The total number was $901 million in terms of inflows. Year to date, more than $27 billion flowing into digital asset investment products. So again, a lot of money this year flowing into these vehicles, mostly institutions accessing these things. And again, has been the trend for a while. Bitcoin attracting $920 million of that. So more than just kind of the entire net. Ethereum also seeing outflows again, $35 million in outflows there. So basically the entire trends that we have seen in terms of weakness for Ethereum, strength for Bitcoin, institutional investors loving their Bitcoin ETFs, everything that we've seen over the last few weeks, still continuing that trend into the election. Solana also getting a shout out with more than $10 million in terms of inflows for those investment vehicles as well. And Solana's shown some pretty relative strength. I do want to bring up the Solana chart because, you know, sometimes you can get distracted. Maybe there's so much going on that you don't really know which ones you should be paying attention to. But if you were to tell me that this is the chart we'd be looking at here, that we'd have Solana sitting basically, let's go a month, at 175, that would tell me that there's excitement back in meme coins, and certainly there has been. And Solana's caught a boost of that recently. And same fears that we've talked about over the summer. Ethereum bros, where you at? If you're in the chat, let us know. We're kind of starting to wonder if you're even out there anymore because it doesn't seem like you are. Things really quiet on the ETH front. A lot of people talking about Ethereum L2s. We're going to talk about Base in a little bit, but not a lot going on for the actual Ethereum chart right now. All eyes on Solana, and the same for institutional investors, at least in terms of the way the net flows are going. See if any of that changes after the election. Methinks not. Let's move on, though, to what else is going on in crypto. This was news out on Friday. Interesting to see Tether FUD back. You know, sometimes it's too long. Sometimes we need a little bit more Tether FUD. I enjoyed some of the takes that we saw from our other Coinage members, including Sean Farrell at Fundstrat, saying that he's thankful for his Pavlovian response to continue betting on crypto despite Tether FUD. Normally doesn't shake the market, and if people are shaked out, shook out, I should say. If people are shaken out of what's going on with Tether FUD, usually there is a bit of a run. But the big headline there is that there is an investigation, a probe into Tether. Of course, Tether's CEO denied that, said that he wasn't aware of any of that. But as we've covered before, you don't really need to be aware of the investigation necessarily from some of these agencies. It's a big one, obviously, just because Tether is so large, more than $120 billion in terms of the market cap, the largest stablecoin by far used across the world. And nothing terribly new when it comes to the investigation in terms of why people would be taking a look at Tether. It's really openly been discussed. So much so that you had Cantor Fitzgerald's CEO, Howard Lutnick, talking about this at the Bitcoin conference. And again, we've been talking about this here at Coinage for quite some time, just because it's quite interesting to see it all unfold. Howard Lutnick is also Trump's co-chair, aka the guy who's going to be running the show if and when Trump gets elected. It's going to be Howard Lutnick steering that ship in his transition capacities. And so he's the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. Cantor Fitzgerald is the company that, according to this one here in the Wall Street Journal, custodies more than $80 billion of Tether's holdings, which is, one of the largest holdings in U.S. treasuries. Even more than Germany. Tether holds more U.S. debt than Germany, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a big project. It's an important one. And you got federal investigators taking another solid look at Tether. And so it's an interesting twist, and it's also one that might potentially not matter at all because of that man there on the left. Howard Lutnick being the co-chair, also the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, also the guy that is basically helping Tether print incredible profits, talking billions of dollars worth of money each quarter. And so what do you think is going to happen if Trump wins and Howard Lutnick is then in that ship to say, you know what, maybe we don't need to take a look at this company. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see. This election means more than that. But it also, as I said, helps explain why Howard Lutnick was talking so much about things you don't actually hear people in the Bitcoin community talk about so much, which of course was, hey, we're working with government agencies around the world to make sure that you're not using Tether for bad things. Kind of a head-scratching thing to talk about in a Bitcoin conference, but if you're Howard Lutnick and you know that that's going on behind the scenes, you might want to say we're above board. So we just want to play that clip again from the Bitcoin conference a couple months ago, and what we heard from Howard Lutnick as he was on stage. Take a listen.
So I want to be unequivocal, okay? Tether does what it says it does. It has one-to-one. It's onboarded with 150 law enforcement agencies around the world. Why do I know that? Because when we formed our relationship with them, we helped them onboard those institutions. We helped them do it. As you all know, every transaction on the blockchain is traceable, and Tether will seize any amount of coin that is involved in illicit activity. They will be caught. So whoever said things about Tether, they're knowingly false, they know it's wrong, and it needs to go away.
So that's what we heard from Howard Lutnick. And of course, as this Wall Street Journal article also mentions, Tether has stepped up exactly what he was talking about there. Last month, Tether said it frozen some almost 2,000 crypto wallets and recovered $114 million in assets. So, talking the talk in the past, as it says, Treasury Department blacklists some wallets, and Tether had not really cooperated with all that. So, when you consider how much, by the way, as this article also mentions, as we covered before, is $4.3 billion that Binance was fined for their anti-money laundering violations. So that's a lot of money. That essentially, as much as it is, it would only kind of wipe out a couple quarters of profit for Tether. So as much money as that is, it's also insane that Tether could basically pay that off and walk away and be fine. The question is how much are they going to find in this investigation? How deep are they going to go? Are there going to be criminal charges here? What is that going to look like? And that's why it's interesting to watch. But you got to think that all that maybe goes away depending on what happens on election day. So let's talk about election day. Look at that segue. That's why they pay me $0 around here. We're going to talk a little bit about the election here, as we did last week with Perianne Boring. If you haven't watched that full episode, highly encourage you to watch our interview there, because Perianne walks through all the important races, not just this one, which is the big bad boy one, the election for president right now. Looking at those numbers, I always like looking at Real Clear Politics, because this is the poll of polls. And this is the one that shows a little bit of the momentum that Trump has been able to stack up in recent days. Getting a huge boost down on the campaign trail from Elon Musk doing his bidding. And it's a little bit clearer than maybe some of the other polls of polls, dare I say Polymarket, we could take a look at, where things still heavily tip in Trump's favor at 66%, roughly. Huge blowout there. Of course, as a lot of people have mentioned, not exactly the best place, I think, to maybe see odds, depending on what your take is. Could just be a lot of people trying to steer the narrative there, so I won't dig too deep into those numbers. But on the state-by-state races, pretty interesting to look at some of those too, because the battleground states are obviously where this is going to be made or broken. And when you look there, still seeing tight races. Pennsylvania, Arizona, all these battleground states in the Senate races. That's important because it seems like control in the Senate might be swinging back to Republicans, and that's what we chatted with Perianne about, is, hey, so many people are talking about the president in that race, but what about all the other ones? So here's what she's told us. Take a listen to what we discussed just a few days ago.
The Senate, Democrats are defending 23 seats and Republicans are defending 11 seats. Of the all Republican seats that Republicans are defending, those are districts or states that lean Republican. So it's almost a foregone conclusion that the Senate will flip under Republican control, just given how many seats Democrats are defending, and the fact that in polls it looks like Republicans have already won that one seat that they need to take the majority. The House is a little bit more of a toss-up. It's harder to say which way it could go. I think it could go either way. It's very, very close in a number of districts. But I think that on the House side, in a lot of these open seats, we have pro-crypto people running all over the country. So we're actually very optimistic that our House, the U.S. House, regardless of which direction it goes, will have a very large pro-crypto constituency.
So that's the expectation, that, again, this will be the most pro-crypto Congress in American history, regardless of who wins the presidency. Of course, as we just mentioned, though, there are a lot of different things that might look different under a Trump presidency versus a Kamala Harris presidency. So still going to be crucially important in that, though we haven't heard much detail. I think it's pretty interesting that, normally we get this close, you kind of start to hear whose picks might be favorites for key positions, whether it's Treasury Secretary, whether it's kind of who's going to lead the SEC. So I don't know, not as much detail there. Also, very interesting to kind of see how the media, of course, Coinage being a community-owned media outlet, interesting to see how kind of different outlets have handled this. The Washington Post, trying to get past trying to bring this article up over here. But the Washington Post basically choosing to not, for the first time in decades, endorse a presidential candidate for president, saying that they're just out of that game. A lot of people talking about whether or not Jeff Bezos pressured the newspaper into that decision because he didn't want them to endorse Kamala Harris, which is interesting to think about in terms of media. And as a community-owned media outlet, we're actually asking all of our members right now, active snapshot vote, whether or not Coinage should endorse a candidate for president. Now, look, I'm not saying we're the Washington Post. I'm not saying we're going to swing things here, but it is at least us walking the walk here in letting you guys tell us what we should be doing. If you have a Coinage NFT, you can use it to vote in our snapshot poll. And most of y'all, in terms of the feedback we're seeing in our Discord as well, saying, hey, don't do that. But I think it's cooler to have you guys telling me not to do that than it is Jeff Bezos telling me not to do that. And I think that that is important to flex here as we are calling all of our members to have your voice heard. Tell us if we should stay out of the endorsement game or get into it, whether or not we should endorse a candidate for president there as a community-owned outlet. It's not so much about what our viewers want to do with their own personal votes, but more so about what we as an organization here at Coinage should be doing. Because I think there have been a lot of bad takes on crypto Twitter when it comes to politics in this race. And if we can use our small but mighty megaphone to do anything there, you let us know. Outside of that, there is a big trend, as we talked about last Monday's show. We talked about AI agents, and we talked about one in specific, and that being GOAT. We talked about this with Travis Kling, and we also showed you the chart. We also talked about it being one of those projects, I think we mentioned it here, closer to about a $200 million market cap. And then when we checked in at the end of the week, it was closer to about a $700 million market cap. So you could do the math on what could have happened there if you got in and got out. Taking a little bit of a breather, but also coming back. So we're at about a $600 market cap right now. And of course, if you don't know the backstory of this coin, go check out our interview with Travis Kling. It's on our YouTube. You can go dig a little deeper on the idea of an AI agent that is a bot, basically trained on 2 Claude large language models, just talking to each other, and then someone saying, hey, you should buy this meme coin. GOAT is that meme coin, and now it's a millionaire or something like that, controls at least more than $1 million worth of the crypto. And the trend has now exploded. Coinbase moved quick. Shout out to the Coinbase team. Basically now spinning up an AI agent framework, a template for people to create a wallet plugged into OpenAI, plugged into a potential Twitter bot if you want to do the same thing that they were doing at GOAT, or Truth Terminal, I should say. Marc Andreessen's been talking about this a lot. So I think we're on to something here. At least the space has always talked about AI and crypto being blended together. And now Coinbase is basically saying, hey, look, with our tool, you can spin one of these bad boys up in 3 minutes and have an AI agent basically trading, swapping, doing whatever you want it to do, plus a optional Twitter bot on top of it all. So I don't know. It's kind of a cool video from their team. Take a listen to what they were saying about how much you can do with this new tool. Take a listen.
It's an autonomous on-chain agent framework built using OpenAI and the Coinbase developer platform SDK. Our goal here is to make it as easy as possible for you to get started building your own AI agents. We have several different modes you can go through, but I think the one that you'll find most interesting is the fully autonomous version, where the agent can just go off and do whatever it wants with different on-chain interactions. It's meant to be a template so you can build AI agents with access to all sorts of different smart contract functionality, integrate with any smart contract you want, perform swaps, stakes, trades.
Now, of course, obviously, it raises a lot of questions as to what might happen with these things as they launch. I think if people lean into the idea of DAOs and community ownership, then you might see a bunch of people running some of these things with feedback, tips, ideas, letting the bot kind of be a non-human arbiter of what things should happen, which is an interesting way of, I guess, philosophically looking at whether or not you want something more akin to a government where technically people are able to vote and influence things versus an AI agent that is completely kind of running the ship, which is a lot of the science fiction eventually, where it's like, hey, AI is better at doing things for us than we are. And it's getting some coverage here in terms of Coinbase now adding this as a tool. So I think it's kind of interesting to at least think about giving people easier access to this, so it's not just coders and hardcore developers who can get involved and experiment with some of this. So shout out to Coinbase for what they're doing there. I think also, though, as we've seen in other coverage, it also raises those same questions about, all right, how is this going to be used? And this article over here talking about Marc Andreessen again, very much at the heart of this, very much at the heart of Truth Terminal, what we saw play out with GOAT. And in terms of Marc Andreessen's take on this, an AI-powered fund, Zach Abrams, formerly with us here at Coinage, writing this up in the blog, talking about the idea of AI-powered funds where people can invest, own a piece of the fund, sell their tokens, get in and out of a fund that is operated by an AI agent. So basically, I guess, we talk about how many jobs might be displaced. Marc Andreessen very interested in already displacing his own maybe VC teams running his own funds. So I don't know. It's all very interesting. And the idea of all this technology slowly trickling through for Coinbase to spin up the ability for you to plug in with OpenAI and run a Twitter bot, basically do what has just kind of exploded in just a few weeks into a $600 million plus market cap project in GOAT, depending on the day. I think it's pretty fascinating, and it's something that we're probably going to see more of here as time rolls on. I think that's pretty much everything that we were looking at. Looking backwards, of course, it's kind of going to be some chop throughout the week and up until the election. For all of our coverage there, go check out our YouTube page or go to Coinage.media to check out all the biggest headlines in Web3 as we cover for you every week. exciting to be watching this all play out with you. And of course, go vote on our open poll if you think we should endorse a candidate and get into that game, or have your voice heard just in terms of who you think might be the better candidate. Take it as you will. As always, appreciate you tuning in with us. We'll also be covering from the courthouse again. We got another FTX founder going in for sentencing. We'll see what plays out and bring you all the latest news as usual. For everybody here at Coinage, I'm Zach Guzman signing off. We'll see you again soon.